Have you ever thought Russian grammar is impossible? Especially with 6 cases and all the crazy endings? How am I supposed to learn that?
You are not alone in this. Russian noun cases are infamously difficult. In fact, nearly every noun can change its endings several times depending on its role in a sentence. If you're an English speaker, it can feel very overwhelming and alien because it's very different from the language that you usually speak. No wonder beginners usually give up on the idea of learning the Russian language by just looking at these hideous tables with endings on the internet. But here's good news, you actually do not have to learn all these case tables to start speaking Russian. Stay with me and I'll show you a different, easier way. Привет! Hi, I'm Daria. Welcome to my channel. This is a place for Russian learners that want to learn my native language without stress, without cramming, but with a lot of joy and learning things that you actually like. Here I'm sharing how to actually make Russian fun and doable despite all of its challenges, even if you're starting from zero. Today we're tackling one of the biggest pain points of all Russian learners, the cases, and we're gonna do it with absolutely beginner-friendly approach. First, what even is a case? If you're new to this, cases are just different forms of a noun or pronoun that show its job in the sentence, like subject or object. In English, we barely have this concept. Aside from pronouns like I, me, he, him, and so on, or adding s for possession. English words don't really change form. We rely on word order. The dog bites the man versus the man bites the dog. Swap the order and you change the meaning. Russian, however, is a different world. We do not rely on the order in a sentence because we don't have it. It's very flexible. And because of it, we rely on the cases. So every word can have 6 different cases. And I always encourage my students to think about it as 6 different jobs. This particular noun can have 6 jobs, and our job is to identify what is the job in order to understand who is doing what to whom. But that means that one noun can have 6 different endings depending on 6 different cases, jobs that it has in singular, and 6 other endings in plural. So 12 different endings one word can have. Take the word for book, книга, infamous one actually. That's the basic form, the nominative case, used for the subject. Also, don't try to remember the names for the cases or the endings, just try to understand the idea for now. So, if you say, I see the book, we need to change the ending of книга to книгу. And if you want to talk about the book's cover, you would say обложка книги, cover of a book. Here, книги is a different ending again. It's all still the word book, but the ending swaps around depending on the meaning. Sounds quite complicated, right? That's not it. Now let's multiply that by every noun you learn. You want to say a cat. You've got кот, кота, коту, котом, коте, and that's only singular. You can imagine how many endings you would have to learn for all the nouns. Many learners hit the wall while trying to learn all the charts. It is often cited as the hardest part of the Russian grammar. But guess what? Even Russian speakers mess up with the cases. I mess up with the cases because there are some cases with some exceptions, with some exceptions inside them that we learn at school for a very long time. We actually have to learn our own native language for 11 years. Russian language is hard even for natives. So if you feel overwhelmed by this, it is completely okay. It doesn't mean that you're bad at languages. Russian language is objectively really hard language, especially this topic of Russian cases. But we know why we gathered here. We're trying to find a way to not learn the tables and still communicate in Russian. Some students come to me after learning the language for months, but they complain that they cannot say very basic things. So I obviously ask them, how did you learn the language? What's up? And they tell me that they just studied the tables and the cases to make sure that once they start speaking, they speak right. The takeaway from all these stories is that while you are learning the names of cases and the endings, the theory remains a theory and practice is not even developed. It's nice to have a theory, but I would start practicing as soon as possible. Cases are not an exception. You can know all the endings and all the names, родительный, винительный, дательный. You can know all the names of all the cases, all the endings, but still freeze up when someone asks you a very simple question. As one experienced learner said, if you memorize the table, you will only have succeeded in memorizing the table. Knowing the rules in theory isn't the same as speaking. Let's give ourselves space and permission to not be perfect, to make as many mistakes as we need on the way. You do not need to recall the names of the cases or the endings because it basically puts sticks in your wheels as you're trying to speak. Does English have this phrase like to put sticks in the wheel? Because in Russian we have a saying вставлять палки в колеса. So, when you're trying to first think about the cases and grab the theory, you do this with your speaking skills. I got a message recently that a person cannot stop thinking about the endings as they are communicating in Russian, as they're producing some sentences. They keep freezing to think about the endings. Let's not do that. Let's just make mistakes and move on with our life. Beginners can easily start communicating in Russian with no grammar tables. How? By learning useful phrases and patterns first. Instead of drilling grammar, start with everyday phrases. Common everyday phrases. This way, you will naturally pick up the correct endings in the context without grammar drills. Think about them as Lego blocks. After you have the Lego blocks of phrases and patterns, you can just match them however you like. Here are a few examples. Меня зовут Даша. This means my name is Dasha. If you can say меня зовут, congratulations. You just used the case correctly. Меня means me in this context. You didn't have to know that it's called accusative case or why it ends with я. You just learned the whole phrase меня зовут as one chunk. And it's perfectly correct. No mental gymnastics needed. Мне нравится пицца. I like pizza. Here we have мне нравится, which is literally is like saying to me, pizza is pleasing. Мне is essentially to me. It's a form of I you use in this kind of sentence. Again, you didn't have to study the dative case table to get it right. By memorizing мне нравится as a unit, you automatically use the correct form, and you can plug anything you like after that. Мне нравится музыка, I like music. Мне нравится этот фильм, I like this movie, and so on. Я живу в Москве. This phrase means I live in Moscow. Did you notice the word Moskva changed to Moskvе here? That's the correct form after v for location. You don't need to know the term prepositional case. You just remember that people say в Москве. If tomorrow you move to say Canada, you can copy the pattern Я живу в Канаде. I live in Canada. Your brain will start to recognize, yeah, after v in place names, often end in «е» or «и», like Москве, Канаде, but you will learn that naturally, by example, not by rote. By collecting these bite-sized phrases, you will naturally train your brain into understanding what sounds natural and what doesn't. By this, you're giving your brain practical examples. For example, after using в Москве, в школе, в кафе, in Moscow, in school, in a cafe, enough times, you'll intuitively use в something, yeah, for other places. You're basically creating language habits. This is how children learn their language, through context. Now, I'm not saying that grammar is useless. This is the last thing I'm saying here, okay? What I'm saying is that when you're just a beginner, when you start learning Russian language, it's better to avoid going into theory so much. Simply because it's too overwhelming, simply because it can demotivate you, simply because it doesn't make sense without practice. I like learning any language. This is how I learned English and Spanish. I love learning language through practice and then adding theory just as sort of reward, actually. Because eventually, once you practiced enough, some patterns click and it feels very satisfying to see these tidy tables with all the endings and see that you actually understand it and you can come up with examples to it. It feels very different to start with a table or to continue with a table. In the very beginning, feel free to ignore all the labels, all the tables, all the complicated jargon for the grammar. Just practice and copy paste a lot from native speakers. You will be communicating sooner and with much less stress. Another key part of this approach is so-called comprehensible input. It's when you get yourself exposed to the content that you're familiar with more or less, but it's just a little bit more challenging than usual. Linguists call it I+1. It helps you to grow naturally while staying confident. Research shows that when learners understand about 98 of what they hear and can infer the rest from context, they start absorbing grammar and vocab almost subconsciously. You understand more and stress less. This is why Weekend Russian School that I'm launching in September has all its lessons to be built around real stories, dialogues, poems, songs, and just Russian context, Russian media, and Russian content designed to be both understandable and challenging, just enough.
Weekend Russian School is a 9-month program designed to take complete beginners to confident A2 speakers with just 4 hours a week, 2 hours of guided self-study, and a 2-hour live speaking and grammar session. You do not have to commit for the whole year. We work in 3-month trimesters, so you join one term at a time, with clear goals and full flexibility. Our course runs from September 1st to May 31st. You'll study short practical lessons during the week, then meet live on weekends for grammar, conversation, and speaking practice. You can choose your weekend slot each week. Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. New York, from 1 to 3 p.m. Los Angeles, or Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. New York time, or from 7 to 9 a.m. Los Angeles time. And if life gets in the way, no problem. You will always get the materials and a class recording to catch up. Our Telegram community is at the heart of it all, a shared space for questions, homework, resources, and simply learning together. We offer free, flexible plans to match your goals. Basic, self-study materials and homework. Plus, adds live sessions and community access. Premium includes personalized homework feedback and monthly speaking tasks with teachers' guidance. By May, you'll confidently introduce yourself, handle real-life situations, express opinions, understand conversations, and feel part of real learning community, moving beyond beginner's level.
Learning Russian is so much easier when you have support. That's why I want to personally invite you to Weekend Russian School. And once again, I want to stress that making mistakes is okay. I feel like we all talk about this a lot, but we don't really use it. It's great to make mistakes, especially in a foreign language. It means that you're growing. Adopt the growth mindset instead of saying, oh, I'm never gonna understand this, or like it's just impossible. Say, I don't understand it yet, or I don't quite get it yet. And something that helps me personally as a language learner myself, I follow content creators that share their embarrassing stories, how they made really bad mistakes in the language. So cope with it however you can, but just continue pushing through. Take it step by step, use phrases as your anchor, and you'll get there. If you would like more help, more guidance, and a community, I would love to see you in my weekend Russian school. The link with all the info is going to be under this video in the description below. Спасибо большое за просмотр. If you found this information helpful, it would be helpful for me if you put a thumbs up on this video so other Russian learners can find me. У тебя все получится. I'm hoping to see you in the weekend Russian school or in the next video. Удачи! Пока-пока!